Well, it's Friday. You'll notice it's another Bachelor edition, and I mean, Sabrina's here. She's running around, and she may stop in. I'm not sure. She has a lot going on with like schooling for the kids. She's basically been running around. They had all these doctor's visits today, and it's just busy. So my hope is that we'll get her maybe for one every 3 mail calls, maybe one every 4. Well, we'll find out. Right now, it's easier for her to do what she needs to do and for me to do what I do, and let's go. Okay, so I'm going to answer some questions. Okay, John Boy of Alaska. Hello, Mr. Boyarski. Comment on the first 2 minutes. I hear you. Talking about family stuff. As far as I'm concerned, you and your family come first. Take care of Sabrina, then yourself, and then the kids. If these videos go by the wayside for a bit, so be it. I don't want to do that. I want to keep the rhythm going. Plus, I don't know. I just look forward to making the videos. I really looked forward to doing it with Sabrina. It's fun to be able to hang out with her. But anyway, my wife and I are also stressed in the same ways. Keep up the good work, but remember, work is just that. Family's forever. Yeah, it's true. All that matters truly are the people that are around us. No one is an island. Okay, we have a question here from Gary Jensen? Sorry if I got that wrong. G'day, Spencer and Sabrina. Question for Friday mail call. Seiko vintage dive watches are at the top of my collection. I would like to ask you, out of all your dive watches you have or have owned, which is your favorite and why? Would it be looks, rarity, or its impression on you? Thanks and all best. Well, let's insert a little video. Well, I didn't have to think too hard about this answer, this question, but one thing I had to make sure was that I wasn't just telling myself a story, but that I truly believed it. And I think so. If I had to choose one dive watch, it would be this one. It was the first modern Seiko dive watch I ever got. This very specific one, I ordered it in the mail, well over a decade ago, and it arrived to the house just when I needed to go on a business trip all the way to the other side of the state. I was going to be gone for 3 days, so I just grabbed the package and I ran. And then I got to sort of a halfway point, Glenwood Springs, Colorado, and I checked into my hotel, and I opened the package and I saw this watch, and it was just love at first sight. And this is, these SKX 007s, they're where it's at. I mean, they're a true everyman tool watch, and they're just great. All things considered, I mean, it doesn't obviously have a lot of value. You can get these for not a lot of money, but I don't really tend to value watches by their price tag. This one is it's such a nice watch, and if I had to just keep the one, that's the one I would keep. Yeah, it's a great watch. I mean, above and beyond the fact that this one has a lot of sentimental value for me, it's you can't get away from it. It's perfectly made. It's a beautiful watch. They did just such a nice job. Speaking of that, I never did wrist check. Okay, wrist check. So, this is a pretty unusual one. This is an H237 5040. H, in my mind, stands for hybrid. It may well be or not be, but that hybrid in the sense that you've got analog and you have LCD. Multifunction. The idea being is that if you're doing like super sporty stuff, well, there's a few things. Having the clock here plus 2 different time zones here, you can actually have this watch be 3 time zones, which is pretty cool. But if you're gonna, you can still see what time it is while you're timing, your toast or whatever. These are really cool. The one thing about them, I think I've probably owned 20 with this movement type of a whole variation of different models. But they are almost always destroyed by a battery leak. It's weird. And so it takes a good amount of time to find enough pieces to make one together that runs. I've had this one in my parts drawers for, long time. And it just took me forever to find enough parts to get it that everything functioned correctly. And even this, I had to make up a stem. These are supposed to have one of the one-piece multi-part stems that has a little springy thing in it like this. So it's built from the factory. All of these I've seen, the stem is broken off. So this is a stem, a closely related stem that works in this movement with some other Seiko crown that doesn't have because this is supposed to be a screw down crown, but I can't screw this thing down because this is the only way. So it just pulls in and out, but it still has a nice big seal in there. These are cool. I just wish they weren't so darn delicate and hard to find. Oh, and this is the correct JDM bracelet. This is a JDM Silverwave. And I found one part of it with this. And this is a pretty common link pattern, so I didn't really think about it until I flipped it over and I saw this. This sort of wider Seiko clasp with this curved front, that's a JDM clasp. And they came from Japan with an extender. So I had to dig all through everything to find the other half of the bracelet because they'd somehow gotten separated. But this is what it is supposed to look like. Pretty cool watch, actually, I think. Yeah, it's really cool. The only other thing I have to do to that Silverwave, and again, because I had to mix and match parts to make everything work correctly, the speaker is supposed to be a sealed unit, and they had sort of the baby one, the low grade one for like just dress watches, and that's made of plastic. But the Silverwaves have one that's like all metal with like rubber gaskets in it. But that part of mine, the contacts are broken off, and so I don't know. It doesn't functionally work. Not like I'm going to go diving with it anyway. Okay, well, let's get on with things. Jonah Yue. Yue? I'm so sorry. Hi, what is the issue with some new Seikos looking horrible on a Timegrapher but keeping good time? Is that a normal thing? Unfortunately, yes. I wouldn't... Seiko has some kind of issue with their mechanical watches of basically every price level going through where they come with sort of bead air built into them, which is really we're like it's too consistent for it to be accidental. Like every single one I see is like that. But as for timekeeping, a long time ago, when I was just fooling around on my own stuff, this is when I was still working in my previous job. I finally caved with my hobby and I got a Timegrapher, which tells you the numbers and it really shows you what's going on for the time. And so I never had a good answer for your question. I was always like, well, if it keeps good time, then that's fine, right? Well, what I found after getting a Timegrapher was that keeping good time actually isn't a good indicator of how well the watch runs, strangely. Even a poorly running watch that's more or less in running condition, but giving poor, weak numbers, should keep, relatively speaking, pretty... Sorry, cop driving down our street. We never get the police coming through here. They'll even a watch that's running badly can keep or seem to give good time. I've seen it more than a few times. I've had some guy once sent in a watch and he said, oh, well, I don't think it needs much. I think it just needs a new crystal. You don't need to service it. It keeps great time. Well, I put it on the Timegrapher at full power and the thing was filthy. And it, according to the Timegrapher, it was running terribly, but it would take a lot for somebody to notice. You have to have the watch like magnetized or something where it's gaining like 5 minutes in an hour. Then you'll notice. Stephen Moore. Hello, Stephen. A couple of questions for Friday mail call. Is there a way to effectively remove corrosion, what you refer to as whale snot, from rotating weights? Well, sure, absolutely. They just got noisy. They must have been done with their afternoon classes or something. There's a product called Brasso that I really like, and it's great for polishing silver and all this other stuff. But the chemical makeup of it attacks corrosion, and so that will certainly do it. You get some of that. You get some Brasso and maybe put a little bit in like a, I don't know, like a little bowl or a dish or plastic bag, and put the weight in there and just leave it for a little while, and you can gently brush all that stuff off. The problem, so it's not hard to get that whale snot off. The problem though is that then at that point the plating is missing and you've exposed the base metal of the weight itself. And the base metal is going to be far more prone to sort of, I don't know. I don't know if it actually sheds material or sheds dust. It makes me nervous. So if a lot of that base metal is exposed, I will probably push towards replacing the weight entirely. Next question. Can you offer some basic tips on cleaning Seiko dials, clarifying how they're produced and therefore what not to do? I know it's a potential minefield, but even if it's whatever you do, never do this, Rodeco seems a simple but surprisingly effective way of cleaning off a lot of gruck off the dial. So any thoughts? All of Seiko's dials, they go through a multi-layer process. Like a lot of the 70s watches will have metallic underlayers and then clear or semi-clear colored coats over it. So it's like any appliance, like a car with a real paint job, and it has these multi-layers. Rodeco is just about the best thing. The issue is you don't want to. Basically, you want to avoid touching the dial with anything that will leave a mark. Rodeco won't leave a mark. It's good. And as long as you're going down and you're dabbing and pulling up, that's good. Sometimes I will find myself dragging sideways to kind of clean it off like I've got a cleaning cloth. I have to stop myself from doing that. If you get a watch that had some moisture inside, not a catastrophic amount, but enough, water inside can weaken how the dial text adheres, because the dial text is on top of everything. So you can, if you're not careful, and if water's been in there, it's been steaming away. I've done this, not for a long time, but I have done it, where you have a weakened dial and you're really aggressively cleaning it with the Rodeco. You can lighten text or take it right off the dial. So it's always a matter of doing as little as you have to. Sometimes, I think the only other twist is that when you get watches that say were heavily over lubricated or just got dirty inside, you can have material, have a dial be really dirty and you kind of can't get it clean, like underneath markers, or if it's a multi-layer dial, you can have oil and dirt and gruck and crap like that. I have a process that I use that is tried and true, basically using the finest camel brush I can get my hands on, and just a pinhead worth of like dish soap, like Dawn or something else like that, and just a little bit of room temperature distilled water. So it's got nothing in it. So basically it's a little bit of soap and water with this super fine brush, and I will get the dial and I'll very carefully wash the dial. Literally, you wash it, and then you can just very carefully rinse it through some still water like this. Like water's not pouring on it, you're just moving your hand through it, and do that gently to get everything off. And you shake it off, and then you get your canned air. Again, very gently. You don't want to sit on it. I have, not for a long time, but I have. I cleaned a dial this way, and I was like, oh, it looks great, looks really nice. And I started cleaning it, and I jetted too hard, and it stripped some of the top layer, the clear coat, right off the dial with the text with it. I ruined the dial. That was a long time ago, but memory of that moment is seared into my brain. So those are really the only two things that I do. Yeah, I mean, there are a couple other weird little tricks that I do, depending, but I don't think there's any point in getting deep into that. Pegwood is your friend. This is Sabrina's every day, every single day. And she's juggling 3 kids, and they're in school, and Sebastian is being Sebastian, and she's got so much to do. Okay. Let's see now. Hello, Spencer and Sabrina. Well, I'm sorry, she's upstairs. I have a question for Friday Q&A. When it comes to vintage watches... Oh, and this, by the way, is Mr. James Duffy of the Sandwich Time channel, who deserves your support and respect. I have a question for Friday Q&A. When it comes to vintage watches, I generally collect near mint or new old stock Seikos from the 1970s. The watches often come with an unknown service history and no service mark inside the case back, but they are also in immaculate condition inside and out. My question is, if the watch arrives running only plus or minus a few seconds per day, should I leave it alone and wear it until there's a noticeable change in timekeeping, or should I get them checked out? Thank you in advance, and thank you for the continued great content. You're welcome. Friday video always makes me feel better after a rough work week. Well, I hope this one is also doing that. Okay. Modern watches, Seiko watches, use synthetic lubricants. Synthetic lubricants, unlike the old lubricants, they'll outgas and they sort of just vaporize away. Versus the older natural lubricants, which turn to shellac, the esters, sort of the volatile elements go away, and you're left with this basically like gummy material. And so in an older watch, you would pick it up if it had been sitting for a long time or was new old stock, never been touched, and it wouldn't run because the shellac would glue everything together. The advantage of that is that, in a way, it sort of forces you to service the watch, which is good. So you're not getting metal on metal and wearing and that kind of stuff. Seiko, of course, uses synthetic. So you have a watch that was brand new 50 years ago. It's never been worn, but all of those lubricants are gone. They're literally not there anymore. So yeah, the watch is going to run really well because nothing is worn and it can slip nice and easily, relatively speaking. The problem is that you have no lubrication and it's going to drastically start wearing. There was one guy who got a new old stock with the box 6139 a long time ago. And he was like, well, I'm not going to bother. He wrote me to ask me about it. And I said, well, don't wear it. I mean, it needs to be serviced first. Don't wear it. And he said, well, I don't know. It runs beautifully. I'll wear it. Now, I'm sure it's going to be fine. And he was kind of like, why would I want to invest any kind of servicing money into basically an unworn brand new watch? Well, he wore it for, I think, a month and a half. And he wrote me again. And he said, man, this thing doesn't run anymore. Dude, what do you expect? You're going to run your car without oil? It's the same thing. So he managed to do enough damage with heavy wear in just that short period of time with no lubricants that it noticeably affected the performance of the watch. So I would say, if you don't know the service history, and it's especially if it's an old watch, get it serviced. Hang on. Let's see. This is Con MCN. I don't know if that's supposed to be Con Men or Con Man or Con Minkin. Spencer, how about looking at the current Seiko lineup and recent watches that have been discontinued, SKX Stargate, and identifying possible collectibles of the future? I'd be keen to hear your thoughts. I know you weren't a fan of most of the current Seiko lineup, but are there any non-reissue watches you've been impressed by? The only reason I really wouldn't be impressed by Seiko is because of their continued QC issues around the completion of movements. But, okay, so let's do this. So, yes, Stargate, SKX. This one's set to correct time, this one I didn't. I mean, I am a big believer in these two models. More and more, you just don't hear about these. It's heartbreaking, actually. It really does kind of make me sad. But the SKX, they're fantastic. I think there's some modern watches. What makes a classic, I guess? And I've seen this over and over and over again. Things that were plentiful and cheap. that people used, and they used up thinking that they weren't that important, and then at a certain point you realize most of them have been destroyed and now they're rare. Volkswagen Beetles. Back in the day, when I was in high school, I could get them for free, literally for free. People didn't want them. I had some guy in a class in college saying, "Hey man, I'm going to have this thing towed away and scrapped unless you want it." And boy, it was a beautiful, beautiful one. It was a 59. But then after a certain time, people don't value them, and the price just starts shooting up, and they're expensive now. Same thing with Vespas. Vintage Vespas, used to be able to get them for nothing, and they're expensive now. So I look at Seiko, and I look at some of the common models that a lot of people don't really think about too much. And so I think one of them is the SNK field watches. Remember, you could get them for like 60, 70 bucks with a woven nylon strap with leather reinforcements, very simple pilot style dial. And they had a bunch of different colors in bead-blasted cases with an exhibition case back. They were really cheap. People bought them and they either lost them, or they beat them to death, or they used them for modding, which means finding one in really, really top condition is going to be a lot harder than other models that were sold as like limited editions that people are going to, keep all this time. So something like that people don't worry about protecting, they're going to get all eaten up. So I think things that SNK line are really cool. 007, of course. Stargate, of course. There are a couple really interesting watches that I'd like to, I wish, well, actually, hang on just one second. Oh, here's another one. This is me shouting into the void, but I think this is the SAA, oh God, I've forgotten the complete model number. It's this beautiful 4R37 slide rule. It's a magnificent design, really clean and restrained. Seiko did a beautiful job on this watch. Again, exhibition case back. It's SAA. Why can't I remember the name of this thing? But it's super cool. So it's like I said, 4R37. So it's hand winding, hacking. It has a 24-hour wheel up here. It has slide rule capability. I put this on a Z199, and it's just a beautiful watch. People just don't think about it. There is one watch that I keep meaning I want to get, and I don't remember the model number. I know they call it the bottle cap, and I keep looking at it, and I keep thinking that would be maybe one to maybe look at closely. I don't know. I mean, I completely missed out on the there's some other model that it sold for almost nothing. You've got white dials with a single color. It's another 4R37. And those now are selling for ridiculous money. Should have gotten on those. Okay, this person, Jack Hutton Hoffman. If I were to be able to pick up a 7A 28 7049 for $300 Canadian but not in working condition, would it be worth it to service the watch? Is the Loom white? Does it have a nice clean dial, clean hands? What's I mean, if it looks bad, if it's all beaten, don't worry, probably not at all. But if it's bright white Loom, it's intact, it has its complete bracelet, and white Loom, that's, I'd say sure. Joseph Stewart. Hang on, I'm just rereading this to make sure that I understand it. Something I seem to hear very often is that it's much more affordable to replace the 7S26 movement in an SKX rather than service it. Is this a true statement or just an easier option? Both, I would say. Definitely easier, faster. You can still get brand new movements. The thing is that it's still a lot less expensive to just pop in a new movement. I mean, my own watch is like, pardon me, my SKX, I would want to service that personally and keep everything together because the watch itself is important to me, so the movement's important. But from just a wearing perspective, oh yeah, you can get a 7S movement for like I think they're like 30 or 40 or 50 bucks. And I mean, they're really cheap, and you can just drop it in. That's easy. Let's see. Augustine Aguilar. Hi, Spencer and Sabrina. I have quite a few Seiko 6000 and 7000 series watches that I service myself. A few of the 7005s have a very low power reserve, between 15 and 20 hours. However, if I wind them via the ratchet wheel, they run for 35 hours or more. I've installed NOS pawl levers and tried different second reduction wheels and barrels, but the problem persists, and I'm out of ideas. Do you have any clue of what I can look at? Well, sure. You talk about the second reduction wheel, and that is I'm trying to think if I should go get a movement. No, I'm just going to tell you. Have you looked at the first reduction wheel? I have in the past. Moisture will sit on the back of the movement if it gets in. And the first reduction wheel that interacts with the pawl lever, it has a post, an axle, and that it moves the pawl lever around, and then the arms are going like this, and it's turning the second reduction, which is turning the ratchet. But that post on the first reduction wheel can wear, and I have seen them where you have the hole in the jewel for the pawl lever, and the post, which is supposed to fill that perfectly so it's not banging around, has been worn down from moisture coming in and sitting in that spot because it's in the back. And so every time that wheel goes around, it's supposed to move the pawl lever with it. Well, but if it's too small, it's going to be going like this. Maybe it'll move it a little bit, but not that much. So I would take the weight with a bit of Rotico, make it into a point, and just move the weight around, zoom, 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 and see how many clicks you're getting, and compare it to something else. That's the next thing I would look at. Hang on just 1 second. I'm going to have a drink. Awfully, horribly smoky here still. Weeks of forest fires. Still ash coming down all the time. Aaron Petterini. Hello, Spencer and Sabrina. Your videos are great for binge watching during the quarantine. Spencer, I was wondering if you could tell me anything about the 6139 Stormtrooper. They seem hard to find, and any research is just harder to find it, for me at least. I know the 6139 part pretty well, but that's about it. It's just, if there just isn't that much info out there, that it's okay. I'm just curious. Thanks, and keep up the good work. Well, let's talk about it. Okay, the Stormtrooper. I haven't heard that term, but it makes sense because the black-dialed version of this watch is called the Darth Vader, or the Vader. Okay, so this is the white version. This is an unrestored example. It's got an acrylic crystal in it, which is wrong, but other than that, it is actually completely original. It's called a helmet-style watch because it's got these little flanges down on each side. The Vader is the black. It's black with yellow markings and some other stuff. This, I would guess then, is called the Stormtrooper. But besides the color of the hands and the dial and the tacky ring here, they're exactly the same. One of the things that's super cool about these is they have a very specific case finishing where this is not brushed. These are actually single engraved lines that run around the entire thing. And so to see one of these cases in really good condition, like better than this, is just a piece of joy. They're a standard 6139 movement. They're going to be B. They were made in the mid to the late 70s. They have this cool helmet style case. They don't have an internal rotating ring or an external tacky. It's just the internal tacky ring. They're cool. They're sort of odd for these days because visually from the front they actually look kind of small, but then on the side they sit pretty high. This kind of stuff, Omega did a lot of this stuff in the early 70s too. They liked these kind of helmet cases, and it was kind of a fashion at the time. It's a nice watch. I need to restore this one of these days. I just wish it had a better dial. Dial's not bad, but like the markers are supposed to be like mirror finish black paint, and a lot of the paint has flaked off, and I don't think I can do a decent job to make those black again. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, so that's what that is. Yeah, crazy, beautiful case finishing. The only other thing to note about that particular model is that it was worn by Al Pacino in some movie in the early 70s, but it was not a popular movie and nobody cares about it, so the fact that it was worn in a movie doesn't seem to have much impact on it. Okay. Sam Cothran? Hi, Spencer and Sabrina. I've been wearing a Seiko H556 5100 Silver Wave Baby Arnie, which I purchased used and had serviced by the Seiko Service Center in New Jersey. I've been wearing it for 2 years now as my daily. I considered buying one thanks to your videos in which you service the H556. I love the 38mm size, and I use all of its functions regularly. Per your advice, I sought an example with bright white Loom. My concern is that, having used the watch almost daily in the deep south, the Loom is noticeably darker, to my eyes at least, and having become a light grayish tan with some tiny bits of pepper. Is this indicative of a problem with the seals? Yes. Or is this normal process given my usage and climate? Also, yes. But relating to the seals. I love the watch, but I've been considering getting a contemporary Seiko to spare the H556 any more damage. What's happening is you have old seals in that watch. You have heat and cold cycles because you're wearing it, and I presume you're not wearing it at night, and so you're gonna get condensation to a degree. The seals are old, so ambient humidity is going to get right inside, and that's just what you're going to do. And that's what you're seeing, those turning gray and getting little black flecks. That means you're getting enough moisture in there to actually be attracted to the salt-based Loom and discolor it. So that's what needs to happen. Is the watch needs to be totally taken apart and rebuilt, cleaned with new seals. You could leave it the way that it is. In terms of the Loom condition, my Revitaloom does clean that stuff up. It should clean that up. Not 100% sure on the Dialoom, but I believe so. So I would say, for the time being, I would find a modern watch, something like it, like the Casio Casino Royale. Is that a Casio? The Casino Royale? No. It's a, wait. Yeah, I think it is. The Casino Royale. They're cheap, but people love them. They're sort of high fashion right now. But then put that other one away in like a plastic bag with some of those desiccant things and just keep it dry. I would also pull the battery. And then when I have time, I'll be happy to look at it for you. Would be interesting to see an SBBN 040 review from you. Well, I don't have one of those, but I can talk about it, sort of. So let's do that. Okay. The SBBN SBBN 0040, is that it? In any case, it's the new 1,000 meter version of the old golden tuna. And it's, so I looked at it carefully. I looked at the pictures, and it looks to me like Seiko did a really nice job. All the details I was looking at were correct. They didn't fudge it up. It's still a correct tuna. They didn't make it all pretty and glitzy and everything. It uses a 4R36. No, I'm sorry, not 4. Uses a 7C46. And thankfully, they kept the 4 o'clock crown. I can talk about that watch, that SBBN, using this, which is an original golden tuna, and I can do that because it looks like that SBBN is an extremely faithful reproduction. Dial text is slightly different. It's more like the JDM, without the SQ there, but the rest of it looks the same. It's titanium, same size, but it's going to have bright Loom. I think that's the only thing I saw that was kind of funky, is that the Dialoom has a slight greenish look to it, whereas the originals were sort of this bone white, trending towards maybe a little bit of tan. That, I think, is the only difference. And, of course, this is a 7549. So, there you go. That's as much of a review as I can do, but I think that's reasonable. Here's the next question, but I figured I'd do this. Hi, it's from Tom. Tom N. Okay. Hi, Spencer. This video is a nice change, but I hope Sabrina can at least join you occasionally. I hope so, too. I like your way of casually saying you modified this or restored that. Do you ever wish you'd gone to a Swiss watchmaker school? Sure. Oh my gosh, yes, absolutely. You know, I'm late to the game here. I would love to be able to learn more things instead of being my own teacher. Let's see. I like your uncle's Seiko, your uncle's Explorer most of all. That to me is what Rolex used to be, solid and functional. Yeah, the nice thing about this, I mean, my great uncle's watch, his Rolex Explorer. It's such a beautiful design. It's such a no frills, perfect watch. It's so legible, and the 1570 movement is, accurate and durable. I'm a big fan of them. I mean, Rolex used to be watches that were just what they are. They were fit for their purpose. So, thanks to my great uncle's watch, I built some other things. So, I have sort of my Rolex trio, and it would, you know, in a zombie apocalypse, these three watches would get me through. I mean, these two especially are a perfect complement to each other. Again, this is the one that I built out of parts. This is my great uncle's Rolex. And then this I picked up, years ago. Came to me from the original owner with the box and service box and everything from a full service it got in like 1990, I think. But then I serviced it. This is another same movement as these two. This is a Rolex 1500. These are only 34 millimeters, so people complain about them, but it's such an elegant design that I do wear these from time to time. Lovely watch. These three watches together, you got what you need. I'm so happy about Uncle Dick's watch. I'm so glad it wasn't thrown away. Okay. Troy Nasello. Question for next week. I have a 6139 with a black plastic like inner ring bezel. The watch looks good, especially with the new crystal that I got from you. But the black plastic part of the bezel is chipped and dull. It looks like it has small gouges taken out of it in a couple of spots, and the plastic is hazy. It's kind of unsightly. Is there a way to restore it? Are they available for replacement, or can I fit one from another model, such as a full metal one? Thanks. Which 6139? So, like literally, like which one? So if you could tell me that, that would be very helpful. Chances, if one is available, pretty much nothing is available. Sometimes you can find better ones in other watches, but again, tell me what it is and I'll let you know. This thing is upside down, so when I'm looking at the camera, it looks like I'm looking this way, so I got this wrong. Hang on. That's better. Still working at this new system. Let's see now. Forbin Colossus, love it. Can you say what model it is? He is talking about the fabulous Star Spork. Let's talk about that. I don't know the actual model number, like the catalog number, what this might have had when it was new, but this I will tell you is a 7N356A49. That's 7N356A4N. Pretty cool. Same exact handset as the 7C, as the 7C4 3 divers. It is pretty beautiful. I wish they put a more like hardcore cool movement in it, or I wish I could retrofit a cooler movement. But it keeps great time, and the casework is beautiful. Yep, the Star Spork. That's what I'm calling it. The Star Spork. ACIM 222. He's talking about a Seiko 7549 7010, the first tuna, the 300 meter one. I got this watch model in 1984 and lost it, diving off of Boiling Pots Cliff on the Big Island. That was in 1996. I'm still upset, but I've got the new SBBN 031 coming today from Japan. Yeah. Boy, it breaks my heart. There's a 7549 at the bottom of the ocean, just sitting there. But you never know, man. If the seals hold, It could still potentially be dry. I spoke to somebody once who was a dredger up in Washington State dredging out rivers, and he dredged up a 6105, and it had stayed. The combination of the fact that it wasn't moving and that it was down in the mud meant that water never got in past the seals. It still had white loom. This dredger found it. I think I wouldn't be surprised if the only danger to that watch sitting there on the bottom of the ocean is the battery that's in it. Gosh, I wish you could find it. But the SBBN 031, that's a cool watch. Gold Bond 11. I saw a comparison video recently between one of the two new Seiko 2020 Seiko 62 MAS reissues and an Oris diver with a Salida movement. Salida, for those of you who don't know, is basically cloning the ETA movements, ETA 2824, that kind of stuff. It's the same, a number of the mid-range European makers are using it. On the Timegrapher, the Seiko 6R movement had a beat error of 4, while the Oris was showing 0 beat error. Is high beat error a bad thing? And should I put off buying Seiko with these movements? Yeah, it's so frustrating. Man, you get anything with one of these modern Salida movements or, ETA or something, and I have perfect confidence every time one of those, I get one in and I put it on the Timegrapher that it's going to be flat as a board and totally clean. And I have the same level of confidence that a brand new Seiko, no matter what the price point, is going to have beat error. Yeah, I mean, you never get that. I can't. I have never seen a Seiko that came to me and had perfect beat error. Like what you get out of a $200 or $300 watch with a new ETA movement in it. I've seen limited edition Seikos, $5,000 and $6,000 and $7,000, brand new, out of the box, have beat error and irregularity, and it's all the way from the top all the way down to the bottom in terms of price point and quality. I don't know why. It happens so consistently that I have to believe that it's a conscious decision, and I don't know why. I don't know. Well, high beat error, it depends what you mean by high. Like you just said 4 here. The scale runs from 0.0 to 9.9. Higher means more beat error. 0.0, you're just going to see that single flat line. Then you start getting into 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, etc. And you'll start to see those two lines starting to come apart a little bit. That's okay. You don't want to go anything above basically 1.0 beat error. And that's information I got from a Rolex tech. He said, well, we really want to get it as tight as we can, but sometimes, if you see something, for isochronism, that's making sure that the balance, that it's going to help keep its timekeeping as the power goes down. That's one of the reasons you want that beat error to be nice and tight. If you start getting above 1.0, then you've got to do something about it. But I have seen watches that have been running for a very long time with like 4.0 beat error. And so I don't know if that's what you mean. Anyway, that's about it. Actually, those are the questions. I can't think of anything else. It's Friday. I probably should get upstairs and start making pizza. And that's it. I'm hoping one of these weeks we will see Sabrina back. I don't think it'll be a regular thing unless somehow life becomes less complex, but not quite yet. So that's it, mail call. You folks have a great weekend.